Part 2. Daehyun walked slowly through the damaged corridor. The lights flickered above him. Torn metal and scattered supplies marked the path where the frightened cub had run. He carried the cardboard box under one arm and a small toolkit in his other hand. He had left his weapon back in the security office. If his plan was going to work, he needed to be as non-threatening as possible. Through his earpiece, he could hear Jinnah and the other security officers monitoring his progress. Cameras mounted on the walls tracked his movement. Half the station was probably watching the feeds right now, waiting to see what would happen. "I have visual on the cub," Jinnah reported in his ear. "It is in Maintenance Junction 42 behind the coolant processor." "Daehyun, are you sure about this?" "No," he answered honestly. "But I am sure the other methods will not work." He found the maintenance junction and stepped inside carefully. The room was small and dim, lit only by emergency lights along the floor. Pipes and machinery filled most of the space. In the back corner behind a large coolant processor, he could see two glowing amber eyes watching him. The cub growled. It was a deep sound that made Daehyun's chest vibrate. The creature was wedged into the tight space, its body pressed against the wall. It had nowhere else to run. Daehyun stopped walking. He was about 3 meters away from the cub. Instead of approaching closer, he slowly sat down on the floor. He crossed his legs and made himself as small and calm as possible. He did not look directly at the cub's eyes. Direct eye contact was a challenge to most predators. "Hello there," he said softly in Korean. His voice was gentle and quiet. "You have had a very bad day, have you not?" The cub hissed at him. It was a terrible sound, like steam escaping from a broken pipe. Daehyun did not react. He simply sat still and continued breathing slowly. In the control room, the aliens watched in confusion. "What is the human doing?" Commander Throssick asked. "Why does he not try to capture it?" "I think he is trying to make friends with it," Jinnah said, though she sounded uncertain. Minutes passed. Daehyun did not move. He did not speak. He simply existed in the same space as the frightened creature, showing through his stillness that he was not a threat. This was the first lesson his grandmother had taught him about dealing with scared animals. Do not chase them. Let them get used to your presence first. Slowly, the cub's rapid breathing began to slow down. Its body remained tense, but some of the panic left its glowing eyes. "I know you are scared," Daehyun said in the same soft voice. "Everything is strange here. Strange smells, strange sounds, strange creatures. You do not know where you are or where your family is. I understand." The cub could not understand his Korean words, but maybe it could understand his tone, the rhythm of his speech, the lack of aggression in his voice. Daehyun slowly reached into his toolkit. His movements were deliberate and non-threatening. He pulled out a ration bar, the kind that security officers carried for long shifts. He carefully unwrapped it, making sure the cub could see what he was doing. The smell of protein filled the small space. It was not fresh meat, but it was food. Daehyun broke off a piece of the ration bar. He gently rolled it across the floor, stopping it halfway between himself and the cub. Then he broke off another piece for himself and took a bite, chewing slowly. He was showing the cub that the food was safe to eat. The cub watched him carefully. Its eyes followed the piece of food on the floor, but it did not move to take it. Daehyun waited patiently. He finished his own piece of the ration bar and then simply sat quietly again. There was no rush. Time was the most important tool he had right now. "Daehyun, you have used 10 of your 20 minutes, Jinnah warned in his earpiece. "The commander is getting impatient." "Tell him I need more time," Daehyun whispered back. After several more minutes, the cub made a decision. It crept forward very slowly, staying low to the ground. Its eyes never left Daehyun. When it reached the food, it quickly grabbed the piece in its mouth and retreated back to its corner. It ate the food in 2 bites. Daehyun allowed himself a small smile. "Progress. Good," he said softly. "You are hungry? That makes sense. Being scared makes everyone hungry." He waited another minute, then rolled another piece of food across the floor. This time the cub took it more quickly. It was beginning to trust that Daehyun would not attack while it was eating. Now came the important part of his plan. Daehyun slowly picked up the cardboard box that he had been sitting next to. He turned it on its side so the opening faced toward the cub. Then he set it down gently on the floor and went back to sitting quietly. In the control room, the confusion grew. "What is that container supposed to do?" Commander Throssick asked. "It has no locks, no force field, no security features at all. Jinna shook her head. I have no idea what he is thinking. But Dae-hyun knew exactly what he was doing. The cardboard box was not a cage. It was not meant to trap the cub. It was meant to give the cub something it desperately needed, a sense of safety and control. The cub stared at the box. Its head tilted to one side the way curious animals often did. It sniffed the air, picking up the scent of the cardboard. The box smelled like processed plant material, earthy and harmless. Dae-hyun remained perfectly still. He barely breathed. This was the critical moment. The cub took one step toward the box, then another. It walked around the box in a circle, examining it from every angle. Its nose touched the cardboard, testing the texture. Its claws tapped against the sides, checking if it was solid. Then, without warning, the cub darted inside the box. Everyone watching the camera feeds gasped. The change in the cub's behavior was immediate and dramatic. Inside the box, it scratched at the walls a few times. It bit gently at one of the corners. Then it turned around 3 times the way dogs on Earth did before lying down. Finally, it curled up into a ball, its tail wrapping around its body. The cub's glowing eyes, visible from the opening of the box, no longer looked panicked. They looked calm, almost content. Impossible, the Quillic scientist breathed. A simple container has calmed an apex predator juvenile? Dae-hyun spoke quietly into his radio. Not just any container, a den. Every predator understands the need for a safe space. A place that belongs to them. A place small enough to defend and enclosed enough to feel secure. He slowly reached into his toolkit again and pulled out a thermal blanket. Moving very carefully, he draped the blanket over the top and one side of the box, creating more of a cave-like structure. The cub watched him but did not react with fear or aggression. It seemed to understand that Dae-hyun was trying to help. The cub made a new sound. It was not a hiss or a growl or a scream. It was softer, deeper, almost like a purr. The sound resonated through the maintenance junction. On Earth, Dae-hyun explained to everyone listening, we have small predators called cats. They are hunters, very good at what they do, and they love boxes, any box. Big cats, small cats, it does not matter. You put a box near a cat and the cat will climb inside. It is instinctive. He carefully slid another ration bar into the box's opening. The cub took it without hesitation this time, crunching the food while staying safely inside its new den. The principle is universal across species. Dae-hyun continued. Predators need to feel in control of their environment. They need territory, even if that territory is very small. This cub has been in a cage transported across space, frightened and confused. It had no control over anything. Now it has a space that belongs to it, a space it chose for itself. Commander Throssick's voice came through the radio. Can you move it? Yes, Dae-hyun said. But the cub stays in the box. That is non-negotiable. Part 3, moving a dangerous predator cub through a busy space station while it sat inside a cardboard box, was not something anyone had ever done before. It would become one of the strangest operations in the history of Harmony's gate station. Dae-hyun called for help from 2 other humans he trusted. Hyun-woo worked in the engineering department. He was calm under pressure and had steady hands. Bora worked in medical. She was smart and understood animal behavior better than most doctors on the station. They met Dae-hyun in the maintenance junction, moving quietly so they would not scare the cub. Both of them stared at the cardboard box with expressions of disbelief. You really did it, Hyun-woo whispered. You calmed a Ravik's cub with a box. The box gave it what it needed, Dae-hyun replied. Now we need to move it back to the Velkari ship without destroying that sense of safety. Bora knelt beside the box and activated her medical scanner. The device hummed softly as it analyzed the cub's vital signs. Heart rate is dropping. Stress hormones are decreasing. This is remarkable. The creature is actually relaxing. We need to be very careful, Dae-hyun said. Any sudden movement or loud noise could ruin everything. The cub needs to believe it is still in control, still safe. They had brought a low cargo sled, the kind used for transporting delicate equipment through the station. Hyun-woo positioned it next to the box while Bora kept watch on the cub's vital signs. I'm going to slide a support plate under the box, Dae-hyun explained. We will move the entire structure together. The box, the blanket, and the cub all as one unit. He pulled a thin metal sheet from his toolkit. Slowly, carefully, he began sliding it underneath the cardboard box. The box shifted slightly. Inside, the cub made a small sound of concern, but it did not come out. It trusted its den. Good, Dae-hyun breathed. Keep trusting us." Once the support plate was fully under the box, the three humans worked together to lift the entire assembly onto the cargo sled. The movement was smooth and gentle. The cub shifted position inside the box but remained calm. "Okay," Daehyun said. "Slow and steady. No rushing. We are just moving its den to a new location." They began pushing the sled through the corridors of the station. Word had spread about what was happening. Curious aliens of many different species watched from doorways and windows as the strange procession passed by. Some of them took pictures. Others just stared in amazement. A human security team was transporting one of the galaxy's most dangerous juvenile predators on a simple cargo sled. Inside a cardboard box, and the creature was letting them do it. "I have been working on this station for 12 years, a Centauran merchant said to his friend. "I have never seen anything like this." The route to Docking Bay 7 was not direct. They had to navigate around damaged areas where the cub had caused destruction earlier. They had to use service elevators because the main lifts were too crowded. Every time they turned a corner or entered a new corridor, Daehyun would speak softly to the cub. "Still here," he would say. "Everything is fine. You are safe." The cub seemed to understand that the voice meant no harm. Occasionally, its glowing eyes would appear at the opening of the box, checking the surroundings. Then it would settle back down inside its den. When they finally reached Docking Bay 7, the Valkyrie captain was waiting with several of his crew. All 6 of the captain's arms were moving in circles of amazement. "This is impossible," the captain said in his clicking language. "We have transported Ravik's cubs for 3 generations of our family. We have always needed heavy sedation and force field cages, but you have calmed one with a primitive container." "It is not about the technology," Daehyun explained. "It is about understanding what the creature needs emotionally. Your cages are strong and functional, but they are also sterile and controlling. The box is weak and simple, but it gives the illusion of choice. The cub chose to go inside. That makes all the difference." The Valkyrie crew had prepared a modified cargo container inside their ship. It was much larger than the cardboard box, with proper environmental controls for the long journey to the Ravik's homeworld. The temperature would be regulated. The air would be filtered. Food and water would be provided automatically. But Daehyun had insisted on some changes to their normal setup. The lighting was softer now, not the harsh, bright lights they usually used. Sound-dampening materials lined the walls, so the engine noise would not frighten the cub, and most importantly, they had cut a large opening in one wall that would allow the cardboard box to be placed inside like a nest within a larger den. "The transition needs to be gradual," Daehyun explained. "The cub should wake up in its box inside the larger container. Over time, it will explore the new space, but it will always have the box to return to when it feels uncertain. The transfer was the most delicate part of the entire operation." Hyunwoo and Bo-Ra steadied the cargo sled, while Daehyun slowly pushed the cardboard box through the opening into the modified container. The cub's amber eyes glowed in the dimness, watching everything, but it stayed inside its chosen sanctuary. "Perfect," Bo-Ra said, checking her scanner one more time. "Vitals remain stable. The cub is accepting the new environment." Daehyun set up the food and water dispensers himself. He programmed them to activate on motion sensors, releasing small amounts at regular intervals. The timing was important. Too frequent and it would seem threatening. Too rare, and the cub would get hungry and agitated. "One more thing," Daehyun said. He pulled 3 more flattened cardboard boxes from his storage pack. He handed them to the confused Valkyrie captain. "These are backups," Daehyun explained. "When the first box gets too damaged or dirty, offer a new one. Let the cub choose which box it wants to use. Do not force it. Just place the new box nearby and let the cub decide when to switch." The captain's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "We use titanium alloy cages that cost 10,000 credits each. And you solve our problem with boxes made of compressed plant fiber that cost almost nothing. Sometimes expensive is not better," Daehyun said. "Sometimes simple is exactly what you need." Bo-Ra was recording notes on her datapad for the medical database. The key factors seemed to be control and choice. The cub was terrified because it had no agency over its situation. By providing a space it could claim as its own, you returned some of that control. The fact that the box is destructible actually helps. If the cub wants to shred it, it can. That power to affect its environment is psychologically important. Hyunwoo nodded. "We think of safety as strong walls and locked doors. But for a predator, safety might mean something entirely different." It might mean having an escape route, or having a small space where nothing can attack from behind. The Valkyrie captain listened carefully to all of this. His species had been spacefaring for thousands of years, but they were primarily prey animals in their evolutionary history. They understood fear from the perspective of being hunted, not from the perspective of being a hunter. This human insight into predator psychology was something new. "We will implement all of your suggestions," the captain said, "and I will file a detailed report with the Galactic Wildlife Transport Association. Other species need to know about this technique." Daehyun, Hyunwoo, and Bora stepped back from the cargo container. The modified space looked comfortable now, not like a prison. The cardboard box sat in the center like a small house. Soft lights created gentle shadows. The whole setup had a den-like quality. "Safe travels," Daehyun said quietly, knowing the cub could probably hear him. "You will be home soon." The three humans left the Valkyrie ship and returned to the station. Behind them, the cargo container door closed with a soft hiss, sealing the cub inside for its journey home. Nobody could calm the predator cub. Then a human used a cardboard box part. 1. The disturbance. The trading station Harmony's Gate orbited a neutral moon on the edge of contested space, where dozens of species conducted business far from their respective governments' watchful eyes. It was a place of careful diplomacy and even more careful movement, where one wrong gesture could start an interstellar incident. When the Valkyrie freighter docked at Bay 7, Station Commander Throsik knew immediately something was wrong. The massive insectoid captain emerged from the airlock with all 6 arms raised in a gesture of apology, chittering rapidly in distress. "Commander, we have a situation. One of our cargo containers was breached during transit. A Ravix cub escaped." The word sent a ripple of panic through the docking bay. Ravix were apex predators from a death world 3 systems away, creatures of pure muscle, fang, and instinct. Even their young were dangerous enough to require specialized containment. Within minutes, the station went into partial lockdown. Security teams armed with neural disruptors fanned out through the corridors, tracking the panicked creature's path of destruction. Overturned cargo, shredded insulation, and the acrid smell of fear marked its passage. Lieutenant Daehyun of the human contingent stood in the security hub, watching multiple feeds as the cub tore through a storage area. The creature was small by Ravix standards, perhaps the size of a large earth dog, but its midnight blue scales and rows of crystalline teeth marked it as formidable. Its eyes glowed amber with terror and confusion. "All teams maintain distance," Throsik ordered. "Stun weapons only. The Valkyrie will face sanctions if we harm their cargo." Daehyun watched as 3 different species attempted to corner the cub. Each time it released a bone-chilling shriek and lashed out with claws that could shred steel plating. The creatures of prey instinct, the Valkyrie, the Centauran observers, the Quillic merchants, all backed away, their biology screaming danger. "It's not being aggressive," Daehyun muttered, studying the footage. "It's terrified." His partner Jinnah glanced over. "Still dangerous, though. Look at what it did to that bulkhead. Fear makes everything more dangerous." Daehyun zoomed in on the cub's body language, the flattened spinal ridge, the tucked tail, the way it kept trying to wedge itself into corners. "It's a baby looking for somewhere safe. A baby that could take your arm off," Jinnah pointed out. Commander Throsik's mandibles clicked in frustration as another team reported failure. "This is unacceptable. If we cannot contain it within the hour, I will have no choice but to authorize lethal force. The safety of this station's inhabitants takes priority." Daehyun made a decision. "Commander, request permission to attempt a non-traditional approach." The insectoid's compound eyes fixed on him. "Explain. Give me 20 minutes. Alone with the cub. If I fail, you lose nothing but time." "Madness," one of the Quillic observers whistled. "Humans are not apex predators." "You lack the necessary intimidation factors." Daehyun smiled. "Exactly. Part 2. The human approached Daehyun walked alone through Corridor 7C following the trail of destruction. He'd left his sidearm in the security office, carrying only a small toolkit and what Jinnah had called the most ridiculous rescue equipment in galactic history. A cardboard box. He'd found it in the recycling bay, left over from a shipment of earth goods. It was simple, brown, unremarkable, about a meter square with fragile printed on the side in faded letters. The station's other inhabitants watched through security feeds, Their varied biologies united in certainty that they were about to witness a human's gruesome death. The betting pools had already started. Dae-hyun found the cub in a maintenance junction wedged behind a coolant processor. The space was cramped and dark, lit only by emergency strips. The creature's eyes reflected the dim light, 2 amber coins of fear and exhaustion. He sat down cross-legged about 3 meters away, making himself small and unthreatening. He didn't look directly at the cub. He'd read that predator species often interpreted direct eye contact as a challenge. "Hey there, little one," he said softly in Korean, his voice barely above a whisper. "Bad day, huh?" The cub hissed, a sound like steam escaping a broken pipe. Dae-hyun didn't move. He simply sat, breathing slowly, letting the silence stretch. He'd learned patience during childhood summers at his grandmother's farm, waiting for feral cats to trust him enough to approach. Minutes passed. The cub's breathing gradually slowed, no longer the rapid pant of panic. "I know you're scared," Dae-hyun continued in the same soft tone. The words didn't matter. The Ravix cub couldn't understand Korean, but the tone, the rhythm, the absence of threat might reach through the fear. "Far from home. Strange smells, strange sounds. Everything's wrong." He slowly reached into his toolkit and pulled out a ration bar, unwrapping it with deliberate movements. The scent of processed protein filled the air. He broke off a piece and rolled it gently across the floor, stopping it halfway between them. The cub eyed it suspiciously but didn't move. Dae-hyun took a bite of his own piece, chewing slowly, demonstrating it was food and not a threat. Then he returned to simply existing in the space, a calm presence in the cub's chaotic world. After several more minutes, the cub crept forward and snatched the food, retreating immediately. But its eyes had lost some of their frantic edge. That's when Dae-hyun introduced the box. Part 3. The box solution. Dae-hyun set the cardboard box on its side, opening toward the cub. Then he went back to sitting quietly, as if the box were the most natural thing in the universe to appear in a maintenance corridor. The station's observers watched in confusion. "What is that primitive container supposed to accomplish?" Commander Throsik chittered. "It provides no security features, no containment field, no structural integrity." Jinna, watching from the security hub, found herself holding her breath. "Come on, Dae-hyun. Whatever you're thinking, make it work." The cub stared at the box with what might have been confusion in its alien features. It took a tentative step forward, then another. Its nostrils flared, scenting the cardboard, processed plant matter, earth-like odors. Nothing threatening. Dae-hyun remained motionless, barely breathing. The cub circled the box warily, examining it from every angle. Then, with a suddenness that made half the observers jump, it darted inside. The transformation was immediate. The cub's body language shifted from hunted to hunter, from terrified to curious. It scratched at the cardboard walls, bit experimentally at a corner, then turned around 3 times before settling into a coiled position. Its eyes, still visible from the opening, had lost their frantic glow. The cub looked almost content. "Impossible," breathed a Quillic scientist. "A simple container providing psychological security to an apex predator juvenile." "Not just any container," Dae-hyun said softly, speaking into his comm for the first time since entering the corridor. "A den, small, enclosed, defensible. Every predator understands the need for a safe space." The cub made a sound, softer than its earlier shrieks, something almost like a purr, though deeper and resonating with subsonic frequencies. "On Earth," Dae-hyun continued, slowly reaching toward his toolkit, "we have creatures called cats, apex predators in their ecological niche, and they love boxes. Doesn't matter if they're tiny house cats or massive tigers. Put a box in front of them and they'll claim it." He pulled out a thermal blanket, moving with glacial slowness. The cub watched but didn't react with aggression. Dae-hyun draped the blanket over the top and one side of the box, creating a more cave-like enclosure. The cub's eyes half closed, a sign of contentment across multiple species. "The principle is universal," Dae-hyun explained, aware his actions were being recorded for analysis by xenopsychologists across multiple systems. Predators need control over their environment. A den, a nest, a territory, something that belongs to them. This cub has been in transit, caged, out of control. Now it has a space that's its own, small enough to defend, enclosed enough to feel safe. He carefully slid another ration bar into the box's opening. The cub took it with less hesitation this time, crunching the food while remaining in its newfound sanctuary. "Commander," Daehyun said. I can move it. But the cub stays in the box. Part 4. The relocation moving. A terrified Ravix cub through a space station while it remained voluntarily inside a cardboard box became one of the strangest operations in Harmony's Gate's history. Daehyun enlisted Hyunwoo from engineering and Bo-ra from medical. Choosing his team carefully, they needed to be calm, move smoothly, and not trigger the cub's prey drive or territorial instincts. You're sure about this? Hyunwoo asked, eyeing the box where occasional scratching sounds emerged. 70% sure, Daehyun admitted, but that's better odds than anything else we've tried. Bo-ra knelt beside the box, her medical scanner humming softly. Vitals are stabilizing, heart rate dropping to what I'd guess is normal for the species. This is remarkable. They'd brought a low-profile cargo sled, the kind used for delicate equipment. Daehyun carefully slid a thin metal sheet under the box, using it as a support to transfer the entire structure, cub, box, and blanket, onto the sled. The cub shifted, but didn't emerge. It had found its safe space and saw no reason to leave. Part 4. 3 days after the incident with the Ravix cub, life on Harmony's Gate station had returned to normal. The damaged corridors were being repaired. The frightened civilians had gone back to their daily routines. But something had changed in a way that nobody expected. Daehyun sat in the station's observation lounge with Jinna. Large windows showed the darkness of space and the distant stars. Ships of many different designs came and went from the docking bays. It was peaceful here, away from the busy corridors and crowded marketplaces. Message for you, Jinna said, reading from her datapad. She smiled as she read the contents. It is from the Velkari captain. What does it say? Daehyun asked, sipping his coffee. Jinna read aloud. The cub remained calm for the entire journey to the Ravix homeworld. When we arrived at the sanctuary, the handlers there were amazed by its condition. Usually transported cubs are stressed, aggressive, and difficult to manage. But this one was relaxed and cooperative. The sanctuary handlers are requesting a full report on human-animal psychology techniques. They want to understand how you did it. Daehyun smiled. I just gave it what it needed. That is all. But the impact of what had happened was spreading far beyond one Ravix cub. The incident had been recorded on dozens of security cameras. The footage had been analyzed by xenopsychologists across multiple worlds. And people were starting to understand something important. Fear was universal. Comfort was universal. It did not matter if you had scales, fur, feathers, or skin. It did not matter if you came from a water world or a desert planet. All living creatures understood the need to feel safe. Strange changes began appearing throughout the station. In the market district, a Quillic merchant named Tekvor had modified his shop. He had installed small, cushioned alcoves along the walls. These were private spaces where nervous customers could conduct business without feeling exposed to the crowds. My sales have increased by 30%, Tekvor told his friends. Customers who used to rush through transactions now take their time. They feel more comfortable, so they buy more. The concept spread. Other merchants began creating similar spaces. Restaurants added private booths with high walls. Service centers set up quiet rooms where stressed customers could wait in peace. The idea of giving people control over their immediate environment became popular very quickly. The station's daycare center, which cared for the children of many different species, made even more dramatic changes. The director, a motherly Centauran named Willa, had watched the footage of Daehyun with the Ravix cub over and over again. She contacted him personally. I need your advice. We have children from 17 different species in our care. Some are prey species, some are predator species. Some are herd animals, some are solitary. They all react to stress differently, but they all get overwhelmed sometimes. What would you suggest? Daehyun visited the daycare and observed the children for several hours. He watched how they played, how they interacted, and how they reacted when things got too loud or too crowded. They need safe zones, he said finally. Personal spaces they can retreat to when they feel overwhelmed. Not punishment spaces, not isolation. Just small, comfortable areas where they can be alone for a while and calm down. Willa implemented the idea immediately. They created different types of spaces for different needs. There were enclosed boxes for species that liked tight spaces. There were open nests for species that needed to see their surroundings. There were quiet corners with soft lighting for species sensitive to brightness. There were padded rooms with thick walls for species sensitive to sound. The results were remarkable. Behavioral problems dropped by almost half within the first week. Children who used to have meltdowns learned to recognize when they needed a break. They would go to their chosen safe space, spend a few minutes there, and come back ready to play again. "You have revolutionized childcare," Willa told Dae-hyun gratefully. "We were trying to treat all children the same way. But they are not the same. They have different needs. By giving them choices and control, we have made everyone happier." Even Commander Throsik was impressed by the spreading changes. He called Dae-hyun to his office one afternoon. "I have been thinking about our detention cells," the commander said. His mandibles moved thoughtfully. "We hold criminals and suspects from many species. Some are aggressive. Some are violent. They damage the cells and injure themselves trying to escape. You want to apply the same principles?" Dae-hyun guessed. "Yes. If environmental psychology can calm an apex predator juvenile, perhaps it can reduce aggression in detained individuals. I want you to consult on redesigning our holding facilities," Dae-hyun agreed. Over the next several days, he worked with the station's security architects. They studied the needs of different species. Some needed more space, some needed less. Some needed social contact. Some needed isolation. Some needed bright lights. Some needed darkness. The new detention cells were not luxurious, but they were more thoughtful. Each cell could be adjusted to match the needs of its occupant. Temperature, lighting, space configuration, even the texture of the walls could be modified. Prisoners were given small choices about their environment. What color light did they prefer? Did they want a solid wall or a force field? Did they want their food delivered by robot or by guard? The violence in the detention area decreased dramatically. Prisoners who felt they had some control over their situation were less likely to lash out. It did not eliminate all problems, but it made a significant difference. The most surprising message arrived on the fourth day. It came from the Interspecies Cooperation Council, marked with official seals and multiple authentication codes. Dae-hyun read it twice before he believed what it said. Then he showed it to Jinna. "They want you to present at the Xenopsychology Symposium on Centauri Prime," she said, her eyes wide with shock. "Dae-hyun, do you understand what this means? That is the most prestigious scientific conference in the galaxy. Every major species sends their best researchers, and they want you to speak there." "They want me to talk about a cardboard box," Dae-hyun said, still trying to process the information. "No," Jinna corrected him. "They want you to talk about what the box represents, about finding simple solutions to complex problems, about how sometimes the most advanced civilizations overlook the obvious answers because they are too busy being advanced." Hyunwoo arrived at the observation lounge, grinning widely. "Have you seen the news feeds? You are famous across 6 different planetary networks. The headline on one says, 'Human befriends Death World Predator with Primitive Container.' Another one says, 'Simple solution solves ancient problem.' You are trending everywhere." Bora joined them, carrying her datapad and looking excited. "I have been contacted by veterinary institutes on 17 worlds. They all want to study what they are calling box therapy for traumatized animals. Some are talking about applying it to zoo animals. Others want to use it for rescued creatures from war zones. You might have just changed how the entire galaxy thinks about animal welfare." Dae-hyun looked at his team, then back out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a Ravix cub was safely home, probably still preferring its cardboard den to any expensive cage. "We did not do anything special," he said. "We just remembered something important." "What is that?" Jaina asked. "Before we are human or Velkari or Quillic or Ravix, we are all just creatures trying to feel safe in a universe that is very big and sometimes very scary. We all need the same basic things: food, water, shelter, and a space that belongs to us, where we can feel in control." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Technology is wonderful. Advanced science is amazing. But sometimes the best solution is not the most complicated one. Sometimes the best solution is simple, obvious, and has been obvious for millions of years of evolution. We just forgot to look for it." Bora nodded. "We were so focused on building better cages that we forgot to ask what the creatures inside those cages actually needed." "Exactly," Dae-hyun said. "We can build force fields and titanium walls and neural suppressors, but none of those things address the real problem, which is fear. If you can solve the fear, you do not need the expensive technology." The observation lounge was quiet for a moment as they all considered this. "So what will you say at the symposium?" Hyunwoo asked. Daehyun smiled. I will tell them about a cardboard box, and about how sometimes the answer we need is right in front of us if we are willing to see it. Part 5. 6 months passed since the incident with the Ravix cub. In that time, everything changed. The Interspecies Cooperation Council published a groundbreaking scientific paper titled Universal Comfort Principles Across Species Barriers. The paper was written by a team of xenopsychologists from 3 different species, including humans, Velkari, and Quillic. They cited the Harmony's Gate incident as the starting point for an entirely new field of study. The paper explained that most galactic species approached animal welfare from their own biological perspective. Prey species designed cages that focused on preventing predators from getting in. Predator species designed cages that focused on preventing escape, but neither approach actually addressed what the contained creature needed emotionally. The human contribution to xenopsychology was simple but revolutionary. Instead of asking, how do we control this creature, humans asked, what does this creature need to feel safe? The shift in perspective made all the difference. Cardboard boxes became an unlikely symbol throughout the galaxy. Not because cardboard itself was special, but because boxes represented something important. They represented choice, control, and the recognition that simple solutions could be better than complex ones. Embassy waiting rooms across dozens of worlds now featured small, enclosed spaces where nervous visitors could sit while waiting for appointments. Diplomatic vessels included private quarters designed with species-specific comfort features. Medical facilities created recovery rooms where patients could adjust their environment to match their needs. But the changes went deeper than just physical spaces. The incident sparked conversations about how different species understood each other. For thousands of years, galactic civilization had focused on technological advancement and logical problem-solving. Nobody had thought much about emotional needs or psychological comfort. Humans, being relatively new to the galactic community, brought a different perspective. They were social creatures who formed emotional bonds easily. They had spent thousands of years domesticating other species, learning to understand the needs of animals very different from themselves. This experience gave them insights that older, more established species had overlooked. The Xenopsychology Symposium on Centauri Prime was the largest scientific gathering in a decade. Thousands of researchers from across the galaxy attended. The main auditorium could seat 5,000 beings, and every seat was filled. Hundreds more watched through live feeds on their homeworlds. When Daehyun walked onto the stage, he felt incredibly small. He was just a security lieutenant from a space station. He had no advanced degrees in psychology or animal behavior. He had never expected to be standing in front of the galaxy's greatest scientific minds. But then he remembered the Ravix cub, frightened and alone, and how something as simple as a box had given it peace. If that simple act could make such a difference, maybe his simple words could too. He began his presentation by showing the security footage from that day. The audience watched in silence as the terrified cub destroyed equipment, screamed at security teams, and wedged itself into corners. Then they watched as Daehyun sat quietly with the creature, offered it food, and presented the cardboard box. When the cub climbed into the box and visibly relaxed, there were gasps of amazement throughout the auditorium. I did not do anything complicated, Daehyun said into the microphone. His voice was calm and clear. I did not use advanced technology or specialized training. I just thought about what the creature needed in that moment. It needed to feel safe. It needed to feel in control. It needed a space that belonged to it. He clicked to the next slide, which showed images of cats from Earth sitting in various boxes. On my homeworld, we have small predators called cats. They are very good hunters. But they also love boxes. Any box. Big boxes, small boxes, boxes that are too small for them. Scientists have studied this behavior for decades. The conclusion is simple. Boxes make cats feel secure. They are enclosed, defensible, and give the cat a sense of territory. The next slide showed wolves in dens, bears in caves, foxes in burrows. This behavior is not unique to cats. Most predators seek out enclosed spaces. They dig dens. They claim caves. They nest in hollow trees. Why? Because an enclosed space has fewer directions that threats can come from. A predator in a den only needs to defend one opening. This is basic survival instinct. He paused and looked out at the audience. The Ravix cub was not being aggressive. It was being defensive. It had been taken from its home, put in a cage, transported across space, and released into a strange environment full of alien creatures. Every instinct told it to find a den, but there were no dens on a metal space station. So I gave it one. The next series of slides showed the changes that had happened across the galaxy in the past 6 months. Daycare centers with safe zones, detention facilities with adjustable cells, merchant shops with private alcoves, medical centers with customizable recovery rooms. We have learned something important, Daehyun said. Safety is not just about strong walls and locked doors. Safety is about feeling in control. When a creature has no choices, it becomes stressed. When it has some control over its environment, even small control, stress decreases dramatically. A Quillic scientist in the front row raised a tentacle to ask a question. Daehyun nodded to him. But how do we know what each species needs? The scientist asked. There are millions of species in the galaxy. We cannot study them all. We do not need to study them all individually, Daehyun replied. We need to ask better questions. Instead of imposing our own ideas of safety onto other species, we should observe what they naturally seek. Where do they go when stressed? What spaces do they choose when given options? What makes them calm down? He clicked to another slide showing various animals from different worlds, all seeking enclosed or elevated or hidden spaces. The specifics vary by species. Some need tight spaces, some need height, some need darkness, some need visibility. But the underlying principle is the same. They need agency. They need choice. They need to feel that they have some control over what happens to them. The presentation continued for another hour. Daehyun showed data from the detention center redesign, the daycare improvements, and the medical facility studies. All of the data pointed to the same conclusion. When creatures were given appropriate environmental control, their stress levels dropped, their cooperation increased, and their overall well-being improved dramatically. A human xenopsychologist named Dr. Yoonji asked the final question of the session. What you have discovered has applications far beyond animal welfare. This applies to how we treat prisoners, refugees, trauma survivors, and anyone experiencing loss of control. Have you considered the broader implications? Daehyun nodded slowly. I have thought about it. The Ravix cub was frightened because it had no power over its situation. But that is a feeling many creatures experience. Prisoners feel it. Patients in hospitals feel it. Refugees fleeing war feel it. Anyone who has been forced into circumstances beyond their control understands that fear. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. The solution is not always a box. Sometimes it is a choice about what to eat. Sometimes it is control over when the lights turn off. Sometimes it is just the knowledge that someone is listening to what you need. The specific solution matters less than the principle behind it. Dignity comes from agency. Safety comes from control. Well-being comes from knowing that your needs matter. The auditorium was silent. 5,000 beings from across the galaxy sat quietly, absorbing what they had heard. Then one person began to applaud. Then another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was filled with the sounds of approval, expressed in dozens of different ways. Clicking mandibles, whistling spiracles, drumming tentacles, stomping feet. Each species showed appreciation in their own manner. Daehyun stood on the stage, overwhelmed by the response. He had just wanted to help a frightened animal. He had not expected to change how the galaxy thought about care, safety, and dignity. Later that evening, Daehyun sat in a quiet garden outside the symposium center. Jinna, Hyunwoo, and Bora had traveled to Centauri Prime to support him. They found him sitting on a bench looking up at the unfamiliar stars. You did well today, Jinna said, sitting beside him. I just told them what seemed obvious, Daehyun replied. Sometimes the obvious things are the ones we most need to hear, Bora said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the cool evening air. What happens now? Hyunwoo asked. Daehyun smiled. Now we go back to the station. Back to our regular jobs. We keep doing what we have always done. You are famous now, Jinna pointed out. Your name is known across the galaxy. People will expect things from you. People can expect whatever they want, Daehyun said peacefully. But I am not a scientist or a philosopher. I am just a security officer who understands that being kind is more important than being complicated. Far away, on the Ravix homeworld, a young cub played in a sanctuary designed specifically for rescued animals. The cub was healthy now, strong and well-fed. It lived in a large enclosure with trees to climb and rocks to explore. But in one corner of the enclosure, There was a simple wooden box. It was weathered and scratched, having been replaced many times over the months, but there was always a box there waiting.